Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real World Productivity Podcast. The title of today's interview is Diving Deeper, Evernote and Focus with Charles Byrd. My name is Adam Moody, and today I'm talking with, well, you already know who I'm talking to, but it's an Evernote and productivity expert. And like I said, his name is Charles Byrd, and we're going to talk about the insights, tips, and some of the ideas that really every one of us should be aware of in order to speed up our way to success and productivity, and in general, just to get great results faster. So welcome, Charles.
Thanks so much, Adam. Pleasure to be here.
Good deal. Well, thank you again for joining us for the interview, and let's just jump right into it. So my first question is really just about you and your background and your experience so that the audience can understand a little bit more about who you are, where you're coming from, and really how they can relate to where they are, or rather how you can relate to where they are. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, just in terms of your background, anything you feel is relevant in terms of either education or experience and productivity?
You bet. So after I got a business degree in information technology, I got my first job on a help desk for a Silicon Valley company, and I nerded out for about 5 years there, and then got into project management, got PMP certified, ultimately started creating departments at the company, founded the social media and collaboration department, among others. Then after 15 years of that, I thought, hey, why don't I not go into work and just start my own company, because that sounds fun. And so I did that, and I had some friends that started companies making physical products, and when they were about the time they were buying their second homes in San Francisco, I was like, you mean my peer group can make successful businesses? No one told me that. So
that's a shocking discovery to make.
It was. No one had mentioned that was on the menu. So basically, I decided to focus on productivity because I've always just personally enjoyed technology and trying to use apps and different tools to be as efficient as possible. That was, of course, necessary in the corporate world. But as you know, starting a company, you want to be as efficient as possible with everything you're doing. So I focused on creating a course teaching entrepreneurs and professionals how to apply Evernote to their businesses and their lives. And just last year, we've reached over 1 million people with our marketing message.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, a little bit about what you said, because we're definitely going to dive into the Evernote stuff, because I'm personally curious, and I know a lot of people want to know about it. But coming up, I actually don't know, and maybe you do, but Evernote has been around for a long time, but I don't think it was around for all of your time as doing project management, right?
That is a fact. Yeah. It came out, I think, around 2009. And I think, I feel like I've been using it longer than that. Even one of the videos I shot about my course, I'm like, I've been using it since 2007. And I looked it up. I'm like, that's not true.
Well, so looking at that, then that's what did you use, I guess, in the beginning? Or, obviously the beginning can be defined however you want it to be. But when you're getting started and saying, man, I really need to start using tools, once you're past that point of maybe, a pad of paper and a pen, what was it that, grabbed your attention as far as apps and making you realize like, oh, this is something I can use to really build my productivity?
Sure. So we'll go back quite a ways. Just even back in college, I was the one kid with a tiny little handheld computer. No one had them. And then even in the corporate days, I was walking around with they called them pocket PCs. They're like an inch thick and, like massive iPhones.
Yeah.
Except dumb. So I've always enjoyed playing with stuff like that, in the corporate space, using Outlook to a crazy degree because it managed tasks and different things like that. And initially, when I downloaded Evernote, when it came out and had all this hype, you can run your life and business off it. I downloaded it and I'm like, it makes notes. How would you use that for much of anything? I thought it was so overhyped and dumb. But then in a kind of a corporate situation where I'd report to the VPs monthly, I went down to San Jose one day and they're like, oh, we're looking forward to your report. I'm like, yeah, next Tuesday. And they're like, no, we need it in half an hour. And so I went back to my office and I'm like sweating bullets trying to pull stuff together from all kinds of different systems. And the anxiety level was just revolting. And I was like, I have to come up with a system to find what I need when I need it. And that was the fire under my ass to go figure it out.
Definitely. Yeah, I can imagine. From my days as an engineer, I've had some times like that where, yeah, I was literally almost sick to my stomach trying to get stuff together. So,
Yes.
okay, so you started using Evernote then in that type of a situation. At that point, I don't think there was any, and again, I defer to you. You would know this topic much better, but was there any sort of training in terms of, hey, here's how you can use Evernote to put it to better use, or here's some frameworks you can use?
Yeah, well, back then, and actually to some degree, even today, uh, Evernote's always been decent at showing you what the tool can do. But where I found an opening is showing people how to apply it to their life and their business. You might know how to create a note, how to apply a tag, or put it in a notebook, different features. But if you don't know how to do it throughout your day when different information is thrown at you, a lot of people end up with Evernote kind of being a catch-all, but then they can't find anything later because they don't have a system for tagging it or organizing it. And that's a fundamental thing that I teach. In fact, Tuesday of this week, Evernote invited me to their campus to do a live stream for their audience because they want to know these techniques too.
That's awesome.
So I got to meet the CEO again, and like it was fun presenting to. Well, they have 200 million subscribers, so we had thousands of people watching. And anyway, even they defer to productivity experts to show how to use it in the real world. And so that's been the focus area for me. I mean, going to conferences and stuff, when people ask what you do, when I say Evernote, their eyes light up for a second because at least they've heard of it. And then the next thing out of their mouth is, oh, I've got it, but I know I could be using it better.
Fair enough. I'm not going to lie. I've been firmly in that camp before. I now have my own little system for it, but I don't use it as like the backbone of my framework. But I've been there several times throughout the years. I think I probably tried it maybe, I can't date this correctly, but probably around 2012, I would imagine. And then, fits and starts, and it kind of became a dumping ground, which is
right.
Like saying that's kind of the death knell of using it, because once it turns into that, it's useless. So
yeah, well, one of my friends came up with a name for it. If you have Evernote just sitting there collecting virtual pixel dust on your phone, you actually don't have Evernote. What you have is #NeverNote.
Oh man, fair enough. Well, then I think this is a good next question then. So what would you recommend for people when they're just starting out, or someone who's maybe been in this position where they've let it, turn into a problem more than a solution? So what would be your first step of, okay, I've got Evernote, now what?
Okay, so I think one of the fundamentals I teach is something I call the Power Trifecta, and that's the combination of tools, workflows, and habits. Because you can have the best tool in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it to your life and your business, then it just sits there collecting that virtual pixel dust. And let's say you do have some great workflows for it, but you don't have the habit triggers in place to execute those in a way that you're capturing important stuff when it comes across your mind or your desk so you can find it later. And so for one, being aware of tying it in with habit triggers, like every time I sit down to meet with someone, that is my cue to just make a new note. Like, I'm meeting someone, new note. Like, when you get in the habit of thinking that way, it becomes kind of autopilot, one situation at a time. When you and I met earlier, make a new note, I tag it with your name, which means super easy to find anything related to our conversations because I just pull up that tag. I also use a tag called notes, ironically, I guess. And so that way I can always pull those up. And other habits, like when the receipt spits out at the Home Depot self-checkout, I don't even leave the register. I hold my phone over it, snap a picture with Evernote, and then if I have to return something, I don't care that the receipt got stuck in the seats or blew out the window other than the littering part. But
No, that makes sense. And I like having that. To me, I realize it's more than a framework, really. But like you said, the trifecta: tools, workflows, and habits. Because like you're saying, you can have one or two of those things, but if you're not integrating that all together, then like you said, you do have a problem. Because on this focus, we talked about this a little bit. I don't, I mean, I've got my own, what I would say, like a stack of tools that I use. But if there's no workflow to it and I don't have the habit to use them, like I obviously happened when I first tried Evernote, then it doesn't work, and it never will. So
exactly. And once you can focus in on the tagging aspect, that becomes your 5-second superpower. You can put your finger on anything you need in 5 seconds. And you're right. These workflows can span multiple tools, and many times they do. But for me, Evernote's the foundation. You'd also asked, what do you do if Evernote's kind of become a dumping ground? How do you resolve it? And my opinion is this: some people are like, oh, I wish I was just starting now. And actually, for people just starting now, you can get a fresh start and learn to apply it correctly. And that's, of course, cool. But I still think people that have collected stuff even for years, you actually still have an advantage over people who haven't, because at least that stuff's in there. And then there's ways to organize it from there. Just to give a couple basic examples, let's say you've been putting all kinds of stuff in there for a while. You can look at the major categories of your life. And just as an example, bank statements or insurance statements, you can look through your notes. You'll see one of those and you're like, oh yeah, I have insurance statements in here. So you can look for specific text on that statement, search for it. All of them will show up and you can tag them in one shot. So you may not be able to clean up everything beautifully, but you can kind of analyze the core elements, areas of your life that you would like to be able to grab, and use that technique to go through them, doing a few specific searches, tagging everything at once. And then for the oddball thing, you can still do just a keyword search anytime you want.
Gotcha. So in terms of, you've mentioned a couple of kind of real world examples. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but do you, I would say, have you separated your personal and business life? The audience can't see me, but I'm using my air quotes, in Evernote, or is Evernote the one-stop shop for you where, your life is kind of contained and organized in there?
Yeah, so for me, I've always approached it as a one-stop shop, and it doesn't preclude you from separating those topics at all. In fact, you can narrow down on any one you feel like at any time, and that comes back to either your tagging system or your notebook system. But I mean, just for a crude example, you could put all your personal stuff in a personal notebook and all your business stuff in a business notebook, and then use tags from there. I've opted to put everything in one place because my system is fully comprised of using tags.
Okay.
Yeah, tags let you get back to information based on the context you're thinking of it. Where an example I use in my webinar training is, if you're meeting with your realtor named Bob, so you're meeting with Bob, what a great name to pick, and then you're talking about real estate, obviously, and maybe it's about a building project. What notebook are you going to put that in? Are you going to put it in the real estate notebook and then hopefully remember that later, or the Bob one, or the building project? When you use tags, no matter how it pops in your head, you're like, oh, I was talking with Bob about something. You can pull up that tag, you'll find that note. Tags allow you effectively to put a note in as many notebooks as you want, but they're really tags. They're not notebooks.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense to me. And then, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, what happens when you have, 100 meetings with Bob or something like that? But then you can start to use the other tags, like you were mentioning. You can basically say, oh, well, this one was about real estate. And then you kind of fine tune it as you go, and that's going to narrow the results.
And the very cool thing about that is, let's say you and I had several conversations. We talk about productivity, we talk about Evernote, we talk about product launches, like whatever we're chatting about. If I put your name in it as a tag, I can look at just a very scaled down list of any other tag that's used in combination with yours. So I might have hundreds of tags, but if I put your name in as a tag, my my next layer down of tags will be completely thinned out to only notes that have other tags with them. So if I put you in, I would see maybe a launch one, maybe a productivity one. I wouldn't see hundreds. I'd see like 3.
Gotcha. That is pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know that, but that's a good one to know. So you've talked about it, and we'll talk a little bit more towards the end about this too, but with your course, which I assume is going to be the answer to my question in terms of time, but if someone went through your course, like how long, what does it take in your mind for someone to become like from 0 to, 0 to 60? So
that's the name of my course, 0 to 60 with Evernote.
I promise I did it. I had seen the pages, but I did not. Maybe that was subconscious feeding.
That's awesome. Way to go, man. So basically, the promise of my course is spend 3 hours in the course. You'll save 3 hours a week going forward. The ROI is the first week you get the time back, and then it adds from there, which if you add all those up, that adds up to 144 hours a year of reclaimed time throughout little pockets of your day. And that equals 18 working days for investing 3 hours to learn some new tricks. So you could dive into it and, Netflix your way through it in an evening, but it really, you can go through a short module on one thing and then start applying it. You get the hang of it, pick up the next trick. Truthfully, learning tags and search, I mean, you need to know the fundamentals of what it can do, how to capture stuff from the web or forward important emails and those basics. But once you know that, really the powerhouse of tags and search, man, that's the jam. That's where it's at.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, kind of coming full circle now here with your background in project management. So, I mean, I would advise people personally to look into Evernote. I mean, obviously you would. I think in terms of trying to get yourself more organized, be more productive, having a tool, whether or not it's Evernote, I would say if you don't have one, then go check it out and please use it. But what would you advise in terms of helping entrepreneurs that find themselves in the middle of a project management role, but unsure of what to do? This is a little bit of a transition, but I had wrote this down before because I know of your extensive background in this. And I think it's really important for people who find themselves in this role, but maybe are not used to it. And I was wondering if you had any advice for those people.
Yeah. So if you're working with a team or even yourself, with my team, we use Asana. So that's, you're probably familiar with it, but it's an online project management app that's very focused around collaboration, and all the communication that occurs between team members is under the context of those specific tasks. But basically the core things that my team uses, Evernote's the foundation. We live and breathe with Slack all day, and Asana. So the cool thing about that is if you're tracking tasks and you have them laid out in a tool like Asana, what frequently happens, this same thing happens in Slack. You can have a task there, but many times you'll need more context when you're digging into the work. So you can have some detailed notes from talking to some web designer or copywriter or engineer or whatever. You have this big note, you just copy a link to it, go to Asana, say, need to do XYZ, and you paste a link to that note. So these tools work together in complete synergy or harmony or whatever. My team's constantly sending me links to Asana tasks or links to Evernote notes that have copy or all kinds of different things to review. So they end up working together like a complete system, even though they're 3 or 4 different tools.
Nice. It's always interesting to see how other people do it. And obviously with your background, I'm actually going to take a look into some of those. So I know about Asana. I personally haven't used it, but might be a good time to take a look. And for anyone who's listening, maybe a good time to check it out. So
yeah, it's a great tool. I've used it forever. Back in the corporate days, we were using Microsoft Project, and I was kicking and screaming to get them onto something modern and usable. In fact, one of my friends, Josh Zirkle, just became their head of community there. He left Evernote 2 weeks ago and now works at Asana.
Small world.
Yeah.
Well, as we're getting close to the end of the interview here, I've got a couple last questions for you. And excuse me. First one is, and I'm very curious about this, what book do you find yourself recommending to others the most to check out and read? Could be any topic, open question.
Yeah, well, I really love Essentialism. That book's awesome. I can look up the author here, but that book really got my wheels turning. I also like The Power of Less. That's another good book, which is creating a theme of minimalism, essentialism. And I it's not up yet, so no one go there, but I bought the domain essential.ceo because it sounds pretty rad.
That's good. There better be something good there.
Yeah, so I want to kind of focus more there. For one, I think people really need that message, and the fact is, I need that message. Like, as a entrepreneur, we're wearing many hats. We want to build multiple products and offers and reach more people in different ways. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we're trying to work on 6 or 7 projects at once, we end up moving the quarters like an inch forward each instead of getting one across the desk and over the finish line. So really, to get traction and get things off your plate and move forward, we really need to focus on less at once and get true traction on the topics that matter the most to our lives and businesses.
100% agree with this. I've had a meeting where the term whole ass was used this week. So we need the whole ass a project instead of, like you said, pushing it just a little bit on a line.
I don't think I've heard that one. I like it.
All right. So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and on the completely non-productivity based topic, I've always bought nonfiction books, but I was talked into buying a fiction book, Ready Player One. It's pretty good.
Good book. I read that not too long ago, sometime this fall. All right. So last question here. If there's one thing that you think that anyone could start doing today, in terms of improving their productivity, wherever they're at, what's the one thing you would tell that person just in general?
Sure. I'd say consider planning your perfect today. And I actually have a template I created. It's in my course.
Cool.
And it's a template that does the following. It lets you get things out of your head, kind of a getting things done approach. So you're not trying to hold everything. Get it out in front of you, look at it, analyze what's actually going to move the needle for your life and your business. And then the template has 1, 2, 3 at the top. Your top 3 priorities for that day. You figure out what they are, then you set a 25-minute timer and dive in on those topics where you're not multitasking, because that's simply task switching and you're really spinning your wheels. So basically running things through the lens of, what am I focused on now? And is this really going to make a difference, a month from now, a year from now? You want to get traction on those things that actually matter, because life just comes at you from all directions, and it's good to have that focus.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Charles, for the great interview. I'm sure that everyone in the audience has gotten a bunch of value from the tips and insights, especially about Evernote, among everything else. We've got a bunch of stuff I've got to relay here. I've got a lot of notes to put in the show notes here. But where can people find out more about you and especially the training?
Cool. Well, you can actually get to a discounted link for the training by going to evernote.killthechaos.pro. That's evernote.killthechaos.pro, because we want you to be a pro at killing the chaos. And if you'd like to check out the Today template, it's actually included in the paid course. I actually just threw this together because Evernote asked if I would be willing to share it. You can get that template by going to today.killthechaos.pro.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you very much again. And it was just a pleasure to talk to you and got some insights. I'm taking notes, not only for everyone who's listening, but for myself. So thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on, Adam.
I'd like to invite you to check out www.productivity.academy today for more information on how you can better manage your time, become more productive, and just get more effective doing the things that you want to do and achieving the goals that you want. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.